Welcome to the Pockets of Knowledge podcast. I'm your host, Desiree Stanley, here to share some amazing conversations. We're talking business, health, making and saving money, or starting something epic. Think of this as your go-to spot for stories that do a lot more than just kill time. They spark ideas, give you a boost, and perhaps even change the way you look at the world. I'm pulling in the experts, the thinkers, the doers, and the dreamers. We're about to dive into stories that open doors and ideas that light up your brain. Here we go. Welcome, everyone, to the Pockets of Knowledge podcast. I'm your host, Desiree Stanley, and with me today is my guest, Shannon Russell. How are you today, Shannon?
Oh, Desiree, I'm great. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Excellent. I'm honored to have you on the show. I'm excited for our conversation, and I can't wait for the listeners to learn more about you and what you do. And so just to share a little bit about you, Shannon, you are a business coach. You are an author. You're the CEO of Second Act Success Coaching. And so I cannot wait to learn more about this. Would you tell us, Shannon, how this came to be for you? What led you down this path to launching the Second Act Success Coaching?
Yeah, well, I ended up having a second act of my own. I began my career working as a television producer in New York City and Los Angeles for about 16 years or so. And then as I was about to have my second son, I just realized I needed a change. I loved it so much, but the hours and travel were too much. So I ventured into entrepreneurship and I opened my first business, which was a franchise. I ran that for 8 years, and then just last year, I sold that successfully, so someone else is running it now, which is great. And in the interim, as I was building that business, my customers and clients would ask me, "Well, how did you go from TV to this? Can you help me?" And so it just gave me the idea that especially women, we sometimes need that extra hand to hold us as we're leaving our jobs and starting a business, so we can actually get to that other side. And that's where I decided to get certified as a coach and launch my coaching business. That's what I did.
Amazing. That's so awesome. And it really is kind of a big swing in terms of the type of career that you are in. Television production is completely different than running your own business, right? And like you said, the hours are probably, well, I mean, maybe the hours are probably the same. When you're
Sure.
running your own business, you kind of do have to devote time, but you've got that flexibility that you can say when you're going to work and when you're not going to work, as opposed to being, somebody else telling you, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I loved it. Like I said, it was my dream career since I was little. But with my first son, I missed his first birthday. I missed the
Mm.
first Halloween. And I just saw that continuing to happen. And with my second son, I was 8 months pregnant. And I just had this moment running through the Times Square subway station, trying to get the bus to get back to daycare and pick up my 3-year-old. And I said, you know what? I think I can check the box on this. And I want to have a little bit more control of my schedule and be a more present mom. That's really what I wanted to be. So I chose to figure it out and make that switch. And it wasn't as simple as maybe I made it sound. There was definitely a lot of struggles in figuring it out. But I am so happy with my choice because now I'm able to, have one career and now start over and have another one and then some. So it's exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you again for sharing that with us. It's always amazing to me how we can choose a different path. We aren't stuck. We're not a tree. We can change paths. We can choose to do something else if what we were doing before just doesn't fit the life that we want to be leading, right? And so, like you shared, you created this as an opportunity for other people. You had done this yourself and you saw that kind of roadmap and wanted to make it easier for others to follow along and make a change for themselves. So tell us then, why would the person who's listening, or anyone for that matter, choose to change jobs and start a second act?
I think it's if you wake up and you realize that really that job that you chose in your 20s doesn't necessarily fit you where you are now. And that's what happened to me. It just didn't really align with my life where it was at that time. And I did take some time to turn inward and ask myself, okay, does this fit? Am I happy? And I think when we choose to ask ourselves those questions and sit in that kind of uncomfortable silence with ourselves, we can figure out if we're happy. And if we're not, what else can we do to make some shifts to figure out what is a more fulfilling path. And I think for me, and what I urge others to do, is to have that conversation and think about your life and how, there's never a perfect time to make a change. And you don't want to end up having regrets at the end of the day. I'm very big on that. And so for me, I said, you know what? Like I mentioned, okay, let's celebrate what I was able to accomplish and let's try a new adventure and let's see what this would look like. And I think when you shift your mindset a little bit and you say, all right, I think I do want to get out of this situation, find something that feels better for me. There's a way to do it where it doesn't cause all that chaos for you and your family.
Yeah, and that's such a great point. So thank you for mentioning that because I think that's part of what keeps people stuck is that uncertainty of how do I go from this income to an uncertain income or no income or whatever. And so I think that's a valid concern that many people have. But you've created, I think, kind of a pathway that helps people to, really think about where do I want to go and how do I want to get there and make it so that it's smoother. Yeah.
Mhm. Absolutely, because I think that is exactly what I would talk with women about is, "Oh, shouldn't I just stay stuck? I'll wait till that perfect time. I'll wait till retirement. I need, this certain amount of money." And I started thinking about it, and really the more conversations I had, I realized, well, okay, so the main problem, the main issue stopping women is just because they don't want to disrupt that perfect flow in their family or in their household. So I really started to put a plan in place where you can do it very strategically and methodically. I'm not a put a date on the calendar and quit type of person. It's okay. Well, if you are thinking about wanting something that's really your own, that's a little bit more you with a business, something that you can control, then let's look at your finances. Let's look at the calendar. Let's figure out how much longer you need to work, how much money you need to save so that you're slowly working towards building that business while you're earning a paycheck. And so it really does become more of a strategic, thoughtful roadmap where you can get to that other side and find success, but you're not just ripping the band-aid off and diving in. Because I think that's all well and good, but in reality, it leads to just so much more anxiety and nervousness. And I want people to feel really confident because the more you research about what it is you're moving into, the more confident you are. And that just helps the process along, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. And that's not to say that there isn't the right time for some people to just make that leap, right? Just I say, that's it. I'm done. I quit and move on to, whatever the next thing is. But I think for a lot of people, you need that methodical kind of step by step. Here's where I line up all the things to get ready. And then here's where I'm good. I'm ready to take that jump now. And I think that can make it so much more accessible for people when they can make those plans and put those things in place. So for me, I agree with you. I think that's kind of the way to go. But, everybody has to choose what works best for them and their family and their situation and whatever. So,
Absolutely.
can we talk about then what some tips are that you suggest that helps people kind of when they're ready to make this change in their life or their at work, really?
Yeah. Yeah, any kind of change. Really, it's that research piece. I think a lot of times the grass looks greener for everyone. And so you think, oh, if I just left this 9 to 5 and I opened a jewelry business, my life is going to be great. But I really suggest that you start researching what a jewelry business would look like, for example, and, maybe talk to other people who already own one or look at companies online that, that has a similar business to what you're thinking about. Look at their reviews, look at what customers are asking or saying, look at the prices and the products and services that they're offering. Do all of that research, and then you'll be able to say, okay, that is really what I want to do. Or maybe, you know what, that actually isn't in the day to day what I thought it would be. And then you can go back to the drawing board. But I think giving yourself that time to really do the research, have some conversations, again, that confidence comes up the more you do that. And then you at least know you're headed in the right direction or not.
Yeah, Shannon, that's awesome. I really think that's a great tip that you just shared. Do your research. And so often I think we do think that the grass is greener over there and something looks shiny and sparkly and like it's going to be so easy. that we don't take the time to really do that deep dive into it, like you just shared,
Mhm.
talking to people, researching companies, looking at prices, all of that kind of stuff, I think is so important in really making sure it's the right fit for you. And, for me, I've loved real estate. I loved the idea of helping people buy and sell homes. And so for me, it was a very easy decision, but it's not an easy job.
Mm.
So, and that's a lot of times people just think, oh, it's so easy. It's quick money. You don't do any work at all. So completely wrong. And that's the thing, is that from the outside, it looks one way. But when you really do deep dive, you see the actual truth of whatever it is. And so I think that's a valid thing for people to do. Take that time to research.
Mhm. So right.
So then let's talk about, you mentioned that you had a franchise and
Mhm.
that you had sold that. So do you want to share what that was like? Because if you went television production, was the franchise business next? And then how did that all happen?
It was, and exactly what you were saying. So I, decided to leave TV. I was on maternity leave with my little one, and I was thinking, okay, I don't want to go back. And in television, it's very much a gig economy. You pick up the phone, you have these relationships, you get your next job. And I said, I don't want to pick up the phone. I don't want to do that. I want to figure out what's next. So I went through, getting a 9 to 5 job, going for my master's. I was doing all these things that just didn't feel right. And through the course of doing that, I learned, okay, you know what? I want to produce something of my own. I want to produce a business. And I started looking into what would I do? And I had a 3-year-old at the time who was building with anything he could get his hands on. And so I was really interested in building a business that kind of taught STEM education to kids, or taught them to think outside of the box and use their hands and their creativity. And as I was researching, I found a business, a franchise called Snapology. And it really ticked every single box of what I was thinking about building from scratch myself. And just what we mentioned, I had the conversations with other owners. I talked to the, CEO of that company. I really did my research. I went and met with everyone in person at the corporate office. And after that, I said, you know what? This feels right. I'm going to use everything I did as a producer and produce this business. And I just took a leap. So that was my first business. And I saw quickly within that first year or so that all of my past experience and my skills really did transfer. And that business grew within probably the first 2 years. I was in the top three of all of the franchisees. So I saw that it was working, and it gave me that confidence to keep building. And then when the idea of coaching came, I just said, well, let me build another business. But yeah, so 8 years later, I was running, both businesses at the same time, and even though I had a big team with my franchise, I just wanted to really devote myself. Instead of working with kids, I wanted to really work with other women at this point in my life. So, yeah, I decided from what, I had read, is that you have to sell a business when it's the hottest, when it's doing its best. And so I put it on the market and found some great owners that really saw my vision and wanted to continue it, and that's what I wanted. I wanted my team to have their jobs. I wanted the business that I built from the ground up to stay and serve my community. So, yeah, so it all happened fall of 2024.
Oh my gosh. Congratulations on that.
Thank
That's
you.
amazing. And what a success story, and so, so fabulous. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
And again, it just goes to show that at certain times, certain things meet what we're looking to do. And it really sounds like that was it for you at that time in that moment. And then you realized there was more that you wanted to do. And so you started the coaching and then devoting yourself to helping other women grow. And I'm assuming men as well. I don't want to limit, this conversation, but yeah, it's fabulous. And so I think that that's such a great thing for us to see, is that again, we can change, we can shift, we can follow new paths as our life calls for it.
Yeah, as long as we're open to it. I mean, I never in a million years would have thought I'd become a business owner. Ever, ever, ever. Never had that desire, but it just felt right at that moment. And so, yeah, I think as long as you're keeping your eyes and ears and heart open to other opportunities, and you just leap when it comes and it feels right, and you just never know what that will lead you to next.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about what it's like to start a business and build a team and be the owner and CEO of a business because it's challenging. I've owned businesses myself, so I know it can be a lot of work and there's never a guarantee that it's going to be a success. But why don't you share with us kind of what it was like for you and growing your business and what you learned about yourself and about growing a business?
Yeah, well, with my franchise, it was a big team. It was hiring teachers to teach these classes to these children, and it was making those partnerships in the community and making these, partners and alliances with libraries and rec centers and schools. So there was just so many pieces to that business that it was a big learning process. But again, I went back to the fact that I'd hired before, I'd made and I just used all of those skills and decided to make the team the heart of the business, and it really was. Like, once you have I believe this so much that once you have really strong people that work with you, that it is a team, and that is what your reputation goes on. So, with the first business, it was so much building and growing and realizing, I think, when to step back because I felt like, "Oh, I don't think I have enough money yet to hire people." And I always say I wish I had hired even sooner to get myself out of, teaching classes and working on the business. But when I began my coaching business, it was just me and continues to be just me and an assistant. And with me, I just realized it's all happening in a slower pace because I was running both businesses at the same time, which gave me, I think, a little bit less pressure with the coaching business. I took on clients as they came to me. It all happened very organically because I was actually getting clients online, but a lot of clients that knew me from my other business. So it was an organic process in how that grew. And I wasn't putting that pressure to grow it, grow it, grow it because I had other things going on. I had 2 kids, the 2 businesses, a podcast, and all of this. So, it was a lot to juggle, and that was nice because I wasn't putting that pressure. And then in selling the business last year, I said, "Okay, well, I can go full steam. Let's create new programs. Let's bring on more clients, and let's make a bigger impact." And so that was nice too. So I think I've seen the ebbs and flows of business and really what it takes to get the word out there and try to grow it and scale it as best you can.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Is there something that really surprised you about yourself in this process?
Yes, I think the fact that I'm a very type A person and, always striving for the next thing, but that when you do start a business, that success isn't going to be overnight. And I think because I had achieved my first big dream in TV, and after a while, you do just pick up the phone and get your next job, and it's a little bit easier. But starting the business, I think I thought I was going to see the success and the money come in right away, and I didn't realize that it was going to take a year or so really to get that money coming into my personal bank account. But because you're constantly growing and feeding back into the business, and it made me realize, okay, like let's step back, be as humble as you can, and just keep working. And I think the fact that I was able to work and keep going and not give up when there would have been so many opportunities, as you know, as a business owner, to give up and throw in the towel. I am proud of myself for just keeping going, balancing the kids and doing it all while growing the business and just keeping at it because the success came. It just wasn't as overnight as I thought it would be. But
Mhm.
that was a great lesson to learn. And I think that goes for anything writing a book, a podcast, starting in a new career, building a business. It all just takes time. And you just have to have the heart and faith and keep working day after day.
Thank you for sharing that because I think you're so right. We really do want the easy, quick, now, like success now. I want the money now. And it isn't always like that. In fact, it's rarely like that. You do have to put the time, the energy, the dedication into the work that you're doing in order to see the benefits. Now, it may come faster or slower for some people, depending on whatever the industry is and the person themselves, whatever. There's so many scenarios, but not giving up. So I love that you shared that. We cannot give up. I mean, unless it's to the point where you realize this absolutely isn't what I thought it was going to be and it's not what I want to do, then there's certainly nothing wrong with making that decision and moving on to something else. but not giving up just because it's hard is a great lesson.
Well, and I think social media makes it hard for us because you see everyone else, quote unquote, being really successful and doing so well and it being so simple. And you have to just check yourself and say, well, I don't know if that's real or not. This is what I'm dealing with. And I'm going to keep moving forward and I'm going to see my type of success eventually, but it's hard to kind of shut all of that out when it's in your face so much.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a fair point for
Mhm.
sure. We see all of these posts and we think like it just happened so fast for them. Why isn't it happening so fast for me? But there's something that I've heard before that I love. And it's, like this is all the success reel. You're seeing all of the successes that they have, but you don't know if this is year 1 or year 10.
Yeah.
And, you've got to keep that in mind. This could be year 10 for them or 11. We have no idea unless we've followed their path, maybe, and we've seen the growth. But keeping that in mind that it's our path is going to take the time it's going to take and not do that comparison. Right.
Oh, yeah. That's
Yeah.
so true.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Okay. Well, do you want to share maybe what your thoughts are on advantages versus disadvantages for franchise ownership or starting, a business that's completely from scratch your own?
Oh yeah, I'd love to. I'm a big proponent for franchises. I call it a business in a box. So for me, when I was starting, I didn't know what it was like to run a business. So for me, by buying into that franchise, they gave me all of the marketing materials, the lesson plans, how to reach out to partners, how to get customers. It was everything at my fingertips, which made it very, I don't want to say simple, but very cut and paste in a sense. Like I had everything I needed as long as I implemented it the right way and I built things in my structures and systems myself, I was on the right path. Whereas you start a business from scratch and there's a lot more self education and learning and feeling it out. So I think that's the main difference. And both are good, both are great. Obviously, with a franchise, you are paying into that. So you're paying a franchise fee to buy the business. And then you're paying a monthly royalty fee usually for the whole term of your contract. So that's something that you have to think about. And some franchises have a lot more rules than others. The one that I opened was fairly new at the time. So we didn't have as many rules and kind of people watching what we did. We had a lot of autonomy, which I loved because I am a creative and I wanted to be able to advertise the way I wanted to. But there are some franchises that are a lot more strict. You have to follow the cookie cutter path. So it depends on you and the kind of entrepreneur I think that you want to be. But for me, I loved learning that aspect and I love building a business from scratch myself. So they're both equal faves, but I like that I can now coach my clients on the pros and cons of each and, have them make their decision and then help them moving forward.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Shannon, for that because that was excellent. I think you're right. Sometimes it just is simpler in some ways to buy into an established business. And like you shared, you've got all of the things, all of the pieces that if you're starting a business from scratch, you have to develop. And for some people, that's really what they want. They want to be able to customize absolutely everything. And, great, go for it, do that.
Absolutely.
But there's a lot of people where it's super, super beneficial to have all of that already ready for you. So you
Yeah.
can just go. And so, yeah, that's an interesting point. I think you've got to, again, know yourself
Yeah.
and know what you want to do and the direction you want to go. So good stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me see where I want to go here. How can a person take their career experience and put it into either, a franchise or business that they're starting from scratch? And you shared how a lot of the things that you did in television production translated into business. So, do you want to share some thoughts on that and how we can take these skills and make them work in a different way?
Well, first, it's really just writing down your skills because so many
Mhm.
times I've talked to women and they think that everything that they know how to do, everyone else can do, which is simply not true. So it's a matter of literally taking pen and paper and writing down everything that you've done and making it into two categories, some stuff that you like to do and tasks that you don't like to do. Because as you're thinking about your next act, your business, whatever career you might be transferring into, you want to make sure that you're a little bit choosy. And just because you're really good at, say, accounting doesn't mean that you want to focus on that in your next option, your next role. So you want to look at what you can do and see what you want to take with you into that next step. I think that's really important. And to appreciate what you've done and write down even things like awards you've been given or experiences or talks you've given, things that are very unique to you. And then all of this, as you're looking at that business or that next second act idea, you can kind of see what transfers and what that thread is to get you from here to there. And you might be surprised, wow, I can really use my team management skills that I do so well as a team lead. And I can hire and manage a team if I open my own business, or I can take this and move it over here. And you start to see those parallels. And then also, I think a lot of times you want to think about, again, what don't I like to do? And maybe I'm going to open a business where it needs that, but that's going to be a role that I hire for. So, in looking at that, you can really see the benefits of moving in whatever direction you're choosing. And also, I like looking back at your skills because it forms what I like to call your career story. So, when you're moving from one thing to the next, I really like to have that story that can become something on your website, but also like your elevator pitch. So when people say, well, why are you leaving real estate and going into opening a boutique? Well, and you can talk about why you are perfect. What is your story to get you from there to here? And it just feeds into what you're building. Because a lot of times there are so many of those comparisons that really make that narrative and really help paint that picture of why you're the best person to run that business because you have this past experience. And I was able to do that with me with Second Act because I was said, okay, well, I produce TV. Now I'm going to produce a business and I'm going to help others produce their own. So it kind of tied my story together as well. So I urge everyone to try to make their own career story because it just gets you more excited about what this next act is going to look like.
Yeah, thank you. Excellent points. Write down the things that you are good at, the awards, the skills, all of that good stuff, and then all of the things you don't like to do, because that's just as important. Because when you know what you don't want, it helps steer you into the direction you need to be going. And so I think that's a great point. And I love this idea of your, kind of story career,
Yeah.
how this transition makes sense and crafting it in a way that you can explain it so that people understand. I see that. I get it. It may seem like two random things, but really the thread that combines them makes sense, and that's where the story comes in. So good stuff, Shannon. Thank you for that. So you mentioned your podcast earlier. Can we talk a little bit about that? It is also called Second Act Success. And so tell us, do you interview guests? Is it a solo show? How frequently do you have episodes?
Yeah, I actually just published last week my 200th episode. So yeah, I love it. It's been so much fun. I started the podcast right when I started my coaching business because I wanted to have a show that inspired listeners, kind of listening to stories of, wow, if she can do it, then I can do it too. And so, yeah, so I interview other women mostly who have started a second act, whether it's a business or just something else in life, and talking about how they went through that process. And then I also do solo episodes on different topics as well. But yeah, it's really amazing because there's so many ways that you can go from being a teacher to this, or, there's just so many examples. So it's been a lot of fun getting to meet people and share those stories.
Yeah, excellent. Congratulations on 200 episodes. That's fabulous. And so is it a weekly show or do you biweekly?
Yeah.
How's it go?
Yep, it's weekly. Yeah, it's pretty much weekly. Every once in a while, I'll pop in an extra one, but yeah, otherwise it's every single week. Usually it launches on Mondays or Tuesdays.
Okay. I will for sure share the details in the show notes for the listeners to easily find and follow your show. I love the idea of showing people it can be done.
Yeah,
There's so many examples of that. And if somebody else can do it, it means you can too, for whatever it is that you want to pursue. So I
absolutely.
love it. Bravo. And also, you had shared with me that you released a book. So, would you share with us about that? And how was that process for you? Writing a book? Was it something you ever thought you would do? And where the listeners can find it?
Yes, thank you for asking. It's called Start Your Second Act: How to Change Careers, Launch a Business, and Create Your Best Life. And yes, I've always wanted to write a book forever. I'm a huge avid reader, but I didn't know where that would fall into my story when I would actually get around to it. And I was taking some online writing classes just for fun a couple of years ago. And I decided, instead of writing fiction, which is what I ultimately want to do down the road, I was like, let me write about my career story and all of the stories from clients and women on my podcast, and put everything that I teach in my programs and my coaching into the book. So it's a resource for people who may not work with me one on one. And so that it's been such a passion project of getting all of that in there. And I put at the end of each chapter, there's just different prompts that you can think about, questions you can answer. So I want people to walk away saying, yep, I have that encouragement. I know I can do it. Here's some advice. I can plan my second act. So, yeah, it's been a wonderful experience. Launched on May 7th this year, and it's been a lot. It's been fun to try to promote it. I've guested on a ton of podcasts and I speak around the country. So it's nice to be able to bring the book with me when I do speak on stages to say, okay, well, you've got more information and good stuff here that you can grab and take home with you. So it's been
Mhm.
lovely.
Yeah, awesome. Well, congratulations on that.
Thank
I
you.
will for sure share the details for the listeners to find that. And that just sounds like such an amazing resource. Like everything is in there that we can follow along and really begin this process for ourselves, right? To launch a second act. And so I think that's tremendous. Congrats on that.
Thank you.
So, Shannon, at this point, is there anything that you would like to share with the person listening that you maybe haven't said or you want to reiterate? Is there something you'd like to say?
I would love to. I would love to say, to give yourself grace. If you're thinking about starting over in any way, shape, or form, that you are worthy, to give yourself grace when you're figuring out what it is that you want to do, and that you do only get this one life. So I don't want you to have regrets at the end of the day. Even if you just start small, you start on the side, go for it. Go for it now, and don't wait for that perfect time, because we don't know what we're given tomorrow. And so, yeah, so start taking some action steps to get there, and you do deserve it. I've had women say to me, well, doesn't everyone hate their job? And it doesn't have to be that way. So I go back and say, well, you don't have to be the one that does. So take action and know that you just give yourself grace on the journey.
Thank you for that. That's beautiful and so important to remember. We deserve it. We don't know how much time we have. This is this one and only life, and we deserve to enjoy it and be fulfilled by it and, challenge ourselves. We absolutely are worth it. And so I think that's a beautiful thing to remember. Oh gosh, Shannon, this has been so excellent. I love this conversation, and you have just shared all the best things. So let me just have you share at this point if there's any other books or podcasts that you think that the listeners should check out, like things that have been helpful or beneficial for you that you really think that they should explore.
Well, for podcasts, for me, I listen to podcasts that take me away from business and self-help. I like to listen to like fun, old 90s shows and things like that. But for books, I mean, I go back time and time again to The Alchemist. And I go back to Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. I just feel like there's some great just inspiration that whenever you kind of feel like, oh, things are getting a little tough, that you can go back and really focus. There's another great book called Finish by John Acuff that I reference a lot, because that book is all about finishing what you start. And yeah, it's easy to start a bunch of things, but I think it correlates to what we're talking about here, is just saying you can finish. Like, start something new and finish it. Like, there is so much pride in finishing what you start, and taking on a new adventure and seeing it through, that there's just such beauty and magic in being like, wow, I got to the finish line with that. And I feel like so much stronger of a person after going through that. So those are just a few books that I would recommend that just are on the top of my head all the time, because I love them
Yeah.
so much.
Oh, for sure. Great recommendations. And I hadn't heard a Finish, so
Mhm.
that's a good one I'm going to check out. But of course, Think and Grow Rich, that's been since the 30s? Did he write that in the 30s or something? So it's been around forever.
Yeah.
But the words in there are just still as true today as they were when he wrote it. So it's brilliant. I absolutely recommend people reading that for sure. And The Alchemist as well. Beautiful. So great recommendations. Thank you for that. Okay, so Shannon, if people have questions for you, want to follow along the work that you're doing, ask you, how do I do this too? Whatever. What is the best way that they could do that?
Well, I'm at Second Act Success on Instagram. So that's a great place to follow along, DM me. I love having conversations there. And secondactsuccess.co is my website. And on there is everything from my book to free resources based on where you are in your second act journey, the podcast, and how to work with me. So everything's there at secondactsuccess.co.
Perfect. Thank you for that. I will for sure detail all of that in the show notes for the listeners again to find you easily because you've got so much wisdom and the experience to help others. And so thank you for that. Thank you for being on the show and sharing this with us. I so appreciate your time and this information. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I really have loved this conversation. Thank you.
Awesome. We'll talk more soon. Thank you, dear listeners, for tuning in to another insightful episode of the Pockets of Knowledge podcast. We appreciate your time and curiosity as we explore fascinating topics together. If you enjoyed today's discussion, be sure to join us next week for another amazing episode. Remember, your journey of learning and growth is a continuous adventure, and we're thrilled to be part of it. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next week, stay curious and keep exploring those pockets of knowledge.